Hello and welcome to Predictipie. My name is Brenda and this is Mo.
Hey.
And we are from STEAMLabs. Before we get started, we like to acknowledge that STEAMLabs is on traditional territories of many nations, such as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. It is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. Artificial intelligence, also known as AI, can do a variety of tasks, from self-driving cars to our YouTube recommendations. Now, although AI isn't what we see in science fiction movies, being robots that can do everything a human can do, modern AI does play a huge role in our lives and can make some really big decisions for us, like the ads we see, or even potentially scanning our university and job applications before an actual human sees it. Because AI continues to develop and continues to advance, it is important that we understand how it works so that we can be part of the conversation when it comes to the development of AI ethic rules and policies. So, to break down how AI is programmed, we decided to build a simple AI to help you get a better understanding of how it works. The AI we built is to help chefs generate new recipes for their restaurants.
Let's take a deep dive into neural networks. Neural networks are a complex way of expressing AI decision making. The AI learns to perform a task by analyzing training data. Our training data consists of 2,500 recipes, each of which is labeled as sweet, quiche, pizza, savory, or other. It's important to note that our training data is not every single recipe possible. It's just a large selection of recipes that we know work. The AI learns the patterns of these recipes, so it can develop rules to classify each recipe as sweet, quiche, pizza, savory, or other. The most important thing is the AI can use these rules that it develops to classify new recipes that aren't even in the training data. This is what makes it such a useful tool for chefs to find new recipes of a specific classification. Let's think of a scenario where a chef wants to try recipes at random with the 28 ingredients we have. That leaves 268 million different combinations of ingredients. Now, that's a lot. This is what makes the Predictipie AI assistant so useful. The chef can pick a classification of recipe at once, for example, pizza, and the AI will generate it, saving the chef loads of time. The recipes in the training data were generated based on the rules that we decided. For example, a sweet pie must have a crust, sweetener, and a fruit, while a pizza pie must have crust, cheese, sauce, and any toppings you may like. These are the kind of rules that help split our pies into different categories. It is important to note that unlike traditional computer programs, where humans give the machine the input and the rules, and the machine uses the rules to figure out the output, the AI using machine learning is not aware of rules in the beginning. It is given the inputs and the outputs, but it develops the rules throughout its training. The end result is the same. The traditional computer program or the AI can take the input, and let's say the input we give are crust, sugar, and cherries. The computer program or the AI can process it with the rules and creates an output. In this case, the output would be sweet pie. You see, the thing that makes AI innovative is that it uses machine learning to figure out those rules by itself. With the advances in computing power and the available data, this has opened up a realm of new possibilities that have not been in reach with traditional computer programming. Let's open up our pre-trained neural network from our Predictipie website. Once you're on the website, make your way over to the hamburger menu on the top left. Once you're there, click Test a pre-trained model, then click Predictipie. As you can see from this image, our neural network looks very similar to the neural network of a brain. But how does it all work? Let's take a look, shall we?
As you can see here, there are many different layers. On the left side, we have the input layer that represents the data the AI is getting. In our case, they represent ingredients. All the way to the right, you have the output layer. These nodes represent what type of pie is being made. The middle two layers are what we call hidden layers. They consist of nodes that make decisions. Once all these small decisions are connected, they make up the final output decision. Let's use the neural network to find some interesting pie recipes. I'm going to create a classroom to get started. I'll invite Mo to this classroom too. Let's first test the model to see if it works. I personally love sweet pies, and my favorite sweet pie is made up of crust, honey, strawberries, and pecans. And look, the AI works and correctly predicted that my recipe is made up a sweet pie. In fact, it is 100% confident that it is a sweet pie. Perfect. Now before we have a dessert, let's try to make a pizza pie for a meal. But there's so many options to choose from to find a pizza. Because right now it's saying that all these ingredients make up another pie. And I agree. I don't know how I feel about chocolate and broccoli on my pizza. So to save ourselves some time, and to save the chef's time of testing all these random combinations, we can just find a pizza recipe using the top right drop-down menu and select pizza and find recipe. And there we have it, a spinach salmon pizza. I love that. To save this recipe for later, we can do that by clicking the Save Recipe button at the top. And I'll name it Brenda's Salmon with a Spin-ish Pizza Pie. To find my saved recipes, we can go to the View Stats. You can find your saved recipes here under My Saved Recipes. And it looks like Mo has been saving his own recipes too. Let's go back and find some more. Now, you have probably noticed the Do you agree with the classifications pop-up screen at the bottom. While the AI can, at times, correctly classify a pie, that doesn't mean that the AI is perfect, and it can sometimes be wrong for many reasons. For example, right now, the AI is showing us crust, pineapple, tomato, cheese, and ham. That's a Hawaiian pizza, and I love Hawaiian pizzas, so I'll classify that as correct. However, I know for a fact that Mo hates pineapples on his pizza, and will probably disagree with me. Let's see what he thinks in our view stats. Yep, he labeled it as other. Now, other than personal taste preferences, there are a lot of different reasons why we may disagree with each other and the AI about pie categories. For example, someone could have an allergy, be vegetarian, or other cultural and religious differences. It would be inappropriate as a chef to serve a pecan pie to someone with a nut allergy. But looking at the accuracy of each category, it can mean a lot of different things. So it's important that we get insight and data from a variety of sources and perspectives.
I know. We just went through a lot. So let's summarize, shall we? We can say that each node represents a small decision that the AI is making, and each small decision adds up and contributes to the final decision to decide what kind of pie our recipe will create.
Now, although AI has power to make our lives a lot easier, it's important to remember that AI is our assistant and not our replacement. So, to make sure that our model is useful or even up to par to cooking, we've invited a real chef to test out our model. Welcome, Chef David Wolfman.
Hi, I'm Chef David Wolfman from Xaxli'p First Nation. I'm a chef professor at George Brown College and I've been there for 26 years. I've always loved food and always loved cooking. As a matter of fact, when I was 9 years old was my first time I cooked in the kitchen, and I've been cooking ever since. I focus mainly on indigenous foods, and when I do what I call Indigenous-fusion, where I'll take some traditional foods, prepare them in a modern way. And that's the difference between what I would call indigenous foods and cultural foods.
Thank you so much for joining us, Chef. We're so excited to see what recipes you come up with using the AI recipe generator. Check out our neural network and let us know what you think.
Wow, this is really cool. The system seems really interesting, but the system doesn't seem to consider my typical ingredients I might use, my cultural values, or my culinary practices.
So sorry to hear that, Chef. You're right. We did not even consider the specific needs when developing this model. We used generic data biased towards westernized cooking. And honestly, this is one of the dangers of AI. It can be biased towards those who create it, and in the process, discriminate against other cultures and their cooking. We're really sorry. We actually should have thought about this earlier before developing the system. Can you explain more of your cultural and culinary practices that we should consider when developing our next one?
Now, if you wanted to cook a food that's traditional to my people in general, I would not make a pie like this shows here. It would be better to have outputs such as stews or roasts instead of a pie, because First Nation people have a long history of making things like soups or roasts, or even preserving foods.
Right, good point, Chef. Pies aren't a common dish in all cultures. We'll retrain the model and have outputs such as stews, roast, and soup. What are other things that we should consider when redeveloping the model?
First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people observed seasons very carefully and took advantage of those foods that were available, both seasonally and regionally.
Ah, I see. So seasons and regions are factors that should be accounted for while developing the model. That's really cool. Are there any other factors that should be considered when cooking Indigenous-fusion cuisine?
Now, another factor essential to their physical survival was learning how to preserve foods and keep them throughout the year when the foods were not available. Non-seasonal ingredients were stored using traditional methods. For example, my people took salmon and wind-dried it so that it would last throughout the winter. We also smoked salmon. And if you look at people in the plains area, they dried the buffalo meat.
Whoa, those preservation techniques seem to be a really effective way to ensure that certain foods are available when they typically wouldn't be in season.
Yeah, those are amazing. Also, thanks for all the information, Chef. It gives us a pretty clear idea of how to go forward. We should add the following consideration to updating the model. What region you are cooking in, what season it currently is, and what is available around. Just to ensure we are meeting your culinary and cultural needs exactly, could you please use our Predictipie website to show us what our model could look like?
I'm going to use the Build a Neural Network to show what your model could look like, and we can start by adding inputs. The inputs I'll be adding are based on regions and seasons, since this way I can exercise my cultural values related to food. First, I'll be adding the Great Lakes and the West Coast, because they are two of the large regions of Canada where Indigenous people have traditionally lived and sourced their foods. Now I'll add spring, summer, and fall, because these are the seasons when Indigenous people traditionally fished, hunted, and gathered wild edibles. So when we hunted large game animal, we didn't just hunt it for the meat. We also utilized all of the animal. So we used the antlers for tools and the bones. We also used the skin for not only clothing, but we also used it for things like moccasins. And we made sure that we used it all. And this was very common among all Indigenous peoples. Let's say we're trying to find a recipe for stews or puff pastries. I'll add the stews and puff pastries in the output. To make a stew, you'll need game meat. To make puff pastries, you'll need fruits. So I'll add game meat and fruits to the inputs. In the middle layer, I'll start adding some ingredients. Now I have my inputs in the middle layer. I'm going to start associating the ingredients to their proper inputs. For example, you pick blueberries in the West Coast during the summer, and of course, blueberries are a fruit. Now, blueberries are also available in other regions. However, for this scenario, We're also considering that most of the blueberries come from the West Coast. And because 90% of them come from the West Coast, we're gonna link blueberries to the West Coast. Now I'm gonna quickly connect the other ingredients to their associated inputs. Let's see if it works. I'll turn on Great Lakes, spring, and game meat. Hey, wild turkey, it works. Now I'm gonna turn on Great Lakes, fall, game meat. Deer doesn't work. The issue is that you can hunt deer in the Great Lakes and the West Coast. See how the deer is connected to both inputs? The system values each input equally. So you need both regions for it to turn on. Let me turn on the West Coast. Oh, there it is. Now it's gonna work. Similar to AI models, to fix that, we have to prioritize an input. The most important inputs are food categories, game meat and fruit. So when you click on the plus button, you can see that each category is weighted equally, 25%. So for the deer, we have to adjust the weights and make sure that the game meat is weighted higher than the rest of the inputs, 50%. That should do the trick. So now you can see the deer label turns green. Now we have to do the same with rhubarb and increase the weight of fruits to 50% because it also can be found both in the Great Lakes and the West Coast. Now that we have our inputs and middle layer working, we need to connect our ingredients to the outputs. So all our meats, deer, wild turkey, and mountain goat, goes in the stew. And all of our fruits, peaches, rhubarb, and blueberries, connect to the puff pastries. Like what we did before, we have to adjust the weights of the stew and pastries to make all the ingredients 100%. Hooray, it works! So if you turn on game meat and fruits, meaning if you cook using both a meat and a fruit ingredient, both stew and puff pastries will turn on. So you don't know which meal your ingredients belong to. In addition, meats don't belong in puff pastry, nor do fruits in stews. So let's make some connections negative, forcing the outputs to turn off. For example, when a meat is on, it forces puff pastry to turn off. And there you have it, a properly functioning neural network. An AI model similar to this one would have my culture and my cooking in mind.
Thanks for all the information, Chef. We're going to apply everything we have just discussed into developing a brand new AI model just for you. With that, it's time to get to work. Thanks so much for your example, Chef Wolfman. It really put things into perspective for us. Thanks for the 2,000 Indigenous fusion recipes that you provided. It really helped train the new AI to understand the pattern of Indigenous fusion cooking, to allow it to know how to generate new recipes that are more aligned to your cultural values and traditional culinary practices. Check out the new AI model we designed for you.
You can see that we've added your own pre-trained model under Chef David Wolfman. Here, you can see that we have new inputs as well as new outputs. At the top drop-down menu, select which region you're in, as well as what season. Once you select Update Model, the ingredients are then updated based on what is available in your region and season.
Super cool, yeah. The AI has suggested that I add hominy corn to the deer stew. You know, hominy corn would be an excellent pairing because of the color and texture, and it's a traditional staple vegetable. This is amazing. I'm excited to try this out just to see how it works. Hi, I'm Chef David Wolfman, and today I'm gonna make a stew using deer meat. When selecting meats for a stew, you want to look for tougher cuts of meat, such as the outside round, the shoulder, and even the shank is a good place to look. When I select fresh vegetables for my recipes, I like to choose them because of their colors, because of their textures, and because of their flavors, and even when possible, trying to get them when they're in season. For this recipe, I'm using rosemary. I love the flavor. It goes great with game. I'm also putting in some sage. So I have all my mise en place. I have my onions that have been diced, my celery, my rutabaga, the carrots. I have my garlic finely chopped up, and then I have some rosemary and some fresh sage. Now I'm gonna sear off the deer meat in about a tablespoon of vegetable oil. Pan is nice and hot, medium-high heat, and the meat has been seasoned. So what I want to do is I want to cook the vegetables until they're soft. Once you add the garlic, gotta be careful. It does tend to burn quickly. And I'm just going to add the tomato paste next, and we're going to let that cook for a couple of minutes. So now we're going to deglaze, and the term deglazing is adding the liquid and getting all those little crispy bits that have all the flavor that's going to go right into the stew and make it even tastier. So I'm just going to add the meat, and it looks beautiful, and give it a little stir. And now for my favorite ingredient, birch syrup, which is very similar to maple syrup. It's still a tree sap, but it takes 140 liters to make 1 liter of this. This adds a nice, I want to say woody kind of forest flavor to that game stew. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in the herbs that I chopped up, which is the fresh rosemary, the sage, and I'm putting in a couple of bay leaves. This will give it the seasoning and the flavor that the stew needs. So now that's come back up to a simmer, I'm going to cover it up and cook it for 45 to 60 minutes. I'm going to check it periodically, make sure it's not bubbling too high, give it a little stir once in a while, but make sure it's covered. So let's take a look at this now. Oh, that looks so amazing. So I have a half a pound of potatoes and 1.5 cups of hominy corn. I'm going to add that to the stew and cook it for 10 to 15 minutes. So that's 15 minutes. The potatoes should be soft. Let's take a look. Looking very nice. The next thing I'm going to do is just remove the bay leaves, and then we're going to plate. Now, who knew that deer meat and hominy corn would go well in a stew? Thanks, AI. Now let's eat.
Thanks so much, Chef. This has been a valuable lesson for us. When creating AI, we must be conscious of our biases and ensure that AI is being developed in a fair and equitable manner. By going through this experience with you, we now have a lens in which we can include your personal and culinary practices and considerations. We hope that with this experience, we at STEAMLabs can apply this lesson to include many more minorities and cultures in all of our future developments.
And thank you for joining us today. We're thrilled to see what recipes you come up with using the AI model. Remember, like Chef David, you can use the Build Your Own Neural Network to construct a model catered to your own needs and interests. Visit us at STEAMLabs.ca to find more AI activities and to learn how to advocate for more ethical policies and rules when it comes to the development of AI. Thanks again.